The letter from Boston arrived on a day when the sky over Wildwood Creek, Colorado seemed to mock Naomi Jenkins with its cheerful blue expanse. Her trembling fingers tore open the envelope, and as she read, her world crumbled around her. Banishment, that was the only word for it. Her family had arranged a marriage to some stranger in the West, a convenient disposal of their disgraced daughter. A suitable arrangement has been made with Mr. Thomas Prescott of Wildwood Creek, her father had written in his precise hand. May you find redemption in your new life, far from the scandal you have brought upon our name. The scandal. Naomi closed her eyes, the memory of it all washing over her anew. She hadn't been the one who'd started the rumors about her and Professor Wilson, but she'd been the one to suffer for them. The fact that nothing improper had occurred between them meant little in Boston society of 1875. Her reputation was ruined, and now, at 22, she was being shipped off like damaged goods to a man she'd never met. 3 weeks later, as the stagecoach lurched through the rugged Colorado terrain, Naomi clutched her small valise, the only possession she'd been allowed to bring besides one trunk of clothing. Her elegant Boston dresses would be useless here, she realized, as she peered through the dusty window at the wild landscape. The coach finally rolled to a stop in what passed for the town of Wildwood Creek. It was May 1875, and the frontier settlement appeared to be little more than a wide dirt road lined with wooden buildings. A general store, a saloon, a small church, and a handful of other establishments made up the heart of the town. Wildwood Creek, the driver called out. End of the line. Naomi stepped down from the coach, her legs stiff from the journey. The dry heat hit her immediately, so different from Boston's coastal breeze. She stood awkwardly beside her trunk, scanning the faces of those nearby, wondering which one might be her future husband. Miss Jenkins. She turned to find a tall man regarding her with curious eyes. He wore a worn leather vest over a simple shirt, dusty trousers tucked into scuffed boots, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. His skin was tanned from the sun, his jaw covered with a short beard that couldn't hide the strong line of his face. Yes, she answered, lifting her chin despite her nervousness. I'm Naomi Jenkins. Thomas Prescott, he said, removing his hat. But everyone calls me Tucker. His eyes were a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin, and they assessed her with an unexpected gentleness. He wasn't what she'd imagined, not the desperate old man she'd feared might be waiting for her. I've got my wagon over here, he said, reaching for her trunk. Ranch is about an hour's ride. He loaded her trunk with ease, then helped her climb onto the wagon seat. As they left town, Naomi sat stiffly beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her back straight as a board. Your family didn't tell me much, Tucker said after they'd ridden in silence for several minutes. Just that you needed a fresh start and might consider becoming my wife. Naomi swallowed hard. And you agreed to that? Taking a wife sight unseen. A small smile played at his lips. Out here, women are scarce. Men outnumber them 5 to 1. I've been working my land for 3 years now, built a decent home, got a good herd started. Time to think about a family. He glanced at her. Besides, I figured anyone wanting to leave Boston for this place must have good reason. I was sent away, Naomi said abruptly, deciding honesty was the only way forward. There were rumors, untrue ones, but that hardly mattered. My family couldn't bear the shame. Tucker nodded slowly. Figured it was something like that. He flicked the reins. Out here, nobody much cares about your past. It's what you do now that counts. The landscape opened up as they traveled, revealing rolling hills dotted with scrub brush, the mountains rising majestically in the distance. Eventually, they crested a rise, and Tucker pulled the wagon to a stop. There it is, he said. Heavenly View Ranch. Below them stretched a modest but well-kept property. A sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney stood near a small creek. Several outbuildings clustered nearby, and in the distance, cattle grazed on the grassland. It's not much compared to what you're used to, Tucker said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. It's beautiful, Naomi replied, surprised to find she meant it. There was something honest about the place, something real that Boston's manicured gardens and imposing mansions had always lacked. When they reached the cabin, Tucker helped her down from the wagon, his strong hands gentle at her waist. The touch sent an unexpected warmth through her body. I'll show you around, he said, carrying her trunk inside. The cabin was simple but surprisingly comfortable. A main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a solid wooden table, a few chairs, and a stone fireplace. A narrow hallway led to two bedrooms, one clearly Tucker's, the other prepared for her with a clean bed, a small dresser, and a hook for her clothes. I made this room up for you, Tucker explained. I thought you might want your own space until we decide if we're suited. The consideration surprised her. Thank you, she said softly. That evening, as they ate a simple dinner of beans, cornbread, and venison stew that Tucker had prepared, Naomi studied him surreptitiously. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 28 or 30, with a quiet confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. So, Tucker said as they finished eating, I figure we should be plain with each other. This arrangement, I know it wasn't your choice. I don't expect anything from you that you're not willing to give. We can take our time, get to know each other. If, after a while, you decide you want to be my wife, I'd be honored. If not, he shrugged. Well, we'll figure something out. Naomi felt a tension she hadn't realized she was carrying ease slightly. That's very generous of you. Tucker smiled, a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Not generous, just right. He stood, gathering their plates. Now, you must be tired from your journey. Get some rest. Tomorrow comes early on a ranch. Later, lying in her narrow bed, Naomi listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the Colorado night, the chirp of crickets, the distant howl of a coyote, the soft rustle of wind through the trees. So different from Boston's clip-clop of carriage horses and murmur of society parties. She wondered what her life would become in this wild place, with this quiet, straightforward man. The next morning, Naomi woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses and made her way to the kitchen, where Tucker was already preparing breakfast. Morning, he said, nodding toward a steaming cup on the table. Coffee's ready. Over breakfast, Tucker outlined the day ahead. I need to check on the north pasture fence. Had some trouble with coyotes getting at the calves. You're welcome to come along, see more of the ranch, or you can stay here and get settled. I'd like to come, Naomi said, surprising herself. The thought of being alone in the unfamiliar cabin seemed suddenly less appealing than accompanying this man she barely knew. Tucker raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Might want to change into something more practical, if you have it. Naomi bit her lip. I'm afraid my wardrobe wasn't selected with ranch work in mind. Tucker considered this, then disappeared into his room, returning with a pair of trousers and a shirt. These might work for now. They'll be big, but you can use a belt. He handed them to her without embarrassment. We can ride into town later this week. See about getting you some proper clothes. Wearing Tucker's clothes felt scandalously improper, yet strangely liberating. The soft flannel shirt swallowed her frame, and she had to roll the sleeves up several times. The trousers, cinched tight with a leather belt, hung loose on her slender form. But when she emerged from her room, Tucker's approving nod made her stand a little straighter. You'll do, he said simply, and handed her a wide-brimmed hat. For the sun, they rode out together, Naomi on a gentle mare named Daisy that Tucker assured her was perfect for beginners. The day was clear and bright, the air crisp with the scent of sage and pine. As they rode, Tucker pointed out landmarks and boundaries, explaining his plans for expanding the herd and improving the land. Water's the key out here, he told her, gesturing to the creek that ran through the property. I've been lucky. This creek runs year-round, even in drought years. Naomi found herself genuinely interested. How did you come to be here? Were you born in the West? Tucker shook his head. Born in Pennsylvania. My pa was a blacksmith. I apprenticed with him, but I always wanted more space, more sky. He looked around at the vast landscape. Came out here after the war. Worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved every penny. When this land came up for sale, I grabbed it. You fought in the war? Naomi asked softly. A shadow crossed his face. Union Army. 3 years. Don't much like to talk about it. They rode in silence for a while after that, until they reached the north fence line. Tucker dismounted to repair a section where the wire had come loose. Naomi watched him work, noting the efficiency of his movements, the quiet competence in his hands. Hand me those wire cutters, would you? He asked, and she was glad to be useful, retrieving the tool from his saddlebag. As the days passed, they fell into a routine. Tucker taught Naomi basic ranch tasks, gathering eggs from the small chicken coop, tending the vegetable garden, even helping with some of the gentler livestock. She proved a quick study, eager to learn despite her city upbringing. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Never saw colors like that in Boston," Naomi remarked. Tucker glanced at her. "Do you miss it?" "Boston, I mean." She considered the question carefully. "I miss certain things. Books, music, my younger sister." She sighed. "But no, I don't miss Boston itself. I always felt confined there, like I was playing a part in someone else's story. And here," Naomi smiled softly, "here, I'm starting to feel like maybe I can write my own story." The next day, they rode into town for supplies. Naomi, now more comfortable in the borrowed trousers and shirts, still felt the curious stares of the townspeople as she walked beside Tucker into the general store. "Mr. Prescott," the storekeeper greeted them. "This must be the lady I heard arrived on last month's stage." "This is Miss Naomi Jenkins," Tucker confirmed. "Naomi, this is Mr. Holloway. He keeps us all fed and clothed." "Pleased to meet you, Miss," Holloway said, his eyes curious but not unkind. "We don't get many new faces, especially ladies." As they gathered supplies, Naomi couldn't help noticing the whispers and glances from the few other customers. "They're talking about me," she murmured to Tucker. "Nothing mean-spirited," he assured her. "Folks are just curious. New faces are rare enough. Pretty ones even rarer." The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, brought a flush to her cheeks. They were examining fabric for new clothes when the store's door banged open, and a harsh voice cut through the quiet. "Well, if it ain't Tucker Prescott and his mail-order bride." Tucker tensed beside her. Naomi turned to see a heavy-set man with a florid face and mean eyes standing in the doorway. "Russell," Tucker acknowledged coolly. "Didn't know you were back in town." "Got business here," the man said, his gaze shifting to Naomi, raking over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "So this is what you sent away for? Pretty little thing." Tucker stepped slightly in front of Naomi. "We're just finishing up our shopping." Russell laughed, an ugly sound. "Heard she was sent out here in disgrace." "What did you do, honey?" "Warm some man's bed you shouldn't have." Naomi flinched as if struck. Tucker's hand went to his belt, where a pistol was holstered. "That's enough, Russell," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Apologize to the lady." The tension in the store was palpable. Russell's gaze flicked from Tucker's face to his gun and back. Finally, he spat on the floor. "No offense meant," he muttered, then turned and left, the door slamming behind him. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, Naomi lost in her thoughts. She had hoped to escape her past, but it seemed it had followed her even here. "I'm sorry about that," Tucker finally said as they neared home. "Frank Russell is trouble. Always has been." "How does he know about me?" Naomi asked. "About why I came here." Tucker sighed. "Small towns have long ears. Someone probably knew someone who knew your family. News travels, even out here. So everyone knows," Naomi said dully. "That I was sent away in shame." Tucker pulled his horse to a stop, reaching over to halt Naomi's mount as well. "Look at me," he said firmly. Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. "What happened back east, it doesn't matter here. Not to me, and not to anyone whose opinion is worth a damn." His blue eyes were intense, earnest. "You're not some punishment I'm enduring. From the moment I saw you step down from that stage, I've considered you nothing less than a blessing. A reward I probably don't deserve." Naomi felt tears sting her eyes. "You can't mean that. You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you work hard without complaint. I know you're brave enough to start over in a strange place. I know you're kind to animals and respectful to everyone you meet." His voice softened. "And I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up everything around you." Something shifted between them in that moment, a connection forming that hadn't been there before. Naomi reached out hesitantly, placing her hand on his arm. "Thank you," she whispered. The weeks passed, summer ripening around them. Naomi grew more confident in her ranch duties, proud of the calluses forming on her once soft hands. She learned to ride better, to help with the cattle, to cook over an open fire when they were far from the cabin. And she learned Tucker his quiet strength, his dry humor, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way he listened when she spoke, really listened, as if her thoughts mattered. The nightmares that sometimes woke him, legacy of the war he still wouldn't discuss. The gentle way he had with injured animals and small children. One evening in late July, they sat by the creek after a long, hot day of work. Naomi had removed her boots and dipped her feet in the cool water, sighing with relief. "I never imagined I could work so hard and feel so satisfied by it," she admitted. Tucker smiled. "Different kind of tired than dancing at fancy parties, I expect." "I never much cared for those parties," she confessed. "Always felt like I was being displayed and evaluated, like livestock at auction." She laughed softly. "Ironic, considering I now actually help with livestock." Tucker leaned back on his elbows, studying her. "What happened back in Boston? The real story, not the rumors." Naomi stiffened, then slowly relaxed. "If anyone deserved the truth, it was this man. I was teaching at a small ladies' academy," she began. "I loved it, opening young minds to literature, history. There was a professor there, older, respected. He took an interest in my teaching methods, mentored me." She sighed. "His wife was jealous, began spreading rumors that we were involved. It wasn't true, but it didn't matter. Once the whispers started, my reputation was ruined." "And your family sent you away rather than stand by you," Tucker concluded softly. Naomi nodded. "Appearance is everything in Boston society. My father couldn't risk his business connections. My mother couldn't bear the social ostracism. So they arranged this marriage and shipped me off with barely a goodbye." Tucker sat up, taking her hand in his. "Their loss," he said simply. "My gain." His calloused fingers were warm against hers, and when she looked into his eyes, she saw something there that made her heart beat faster. "Tucker," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and then his lips were on hers, gentle but certain. Naomi's eyes fluttered closed as she leaned into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. When they broke apart, Tucker rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Naomi Jenkins," he said quietly. "Not because you were sent to me, but because of who you are. The way you face each day with courage. The way you've embraced this life. The woman you're becoming out here." Tears pricked her eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "And it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I never planned this. Because what if I'm not strong enough for this life? Because what if you decide I'm not what you want after all?" Tucker brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Life out here is hard sometimes. I won't pretend it isn't. But we'd face it together. As for not wanting you." He shook his head. "Not possible." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in town. Naomi wore a simple dress of pale blue calico that she and Mrs. Holloway, the storekeeper's wife, had made together. Tucker wore his best shirt and a new vest. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, curious to see the Boston lady who had captured the quiet rancher's heart. After the simple ceremony and the community celebration that followed, Tucker drove them home in the wagon decorated with ribbons and flowers by the townswomen. As they approached the ranch, he pulled the wagon to a stop at the same spot where he'd first shown her the property. "Welcome home, Mrs. Prescott," he said, helping her down. But instead of heading to the cabin, he led her to a grove of cottonwood trees near the creek, where a blanket had been spread, a basket waiting. "A wedding picnic," he explained with a smile. "Just us." They ate the simple meal: cold chicken, biscuits, early apples as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land. "I have something for you," Tucker said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden box. "It's not much, but—" Inside was a delicate silver chain with a small pendant, a star with a tiny pearl at its center. "It was my mother's," Tucker explained as he fastened it around her neck. "She always said the right woman would come into my life like a star guiding me home." Naomi touched the pendant, deeply moved. "It's beautiful. Thank you." Later, as twilight deepened into night, they made their way back to the cabin, their home. At the door, Tucker paused. "I meant what I said before. We can take this slow. If you're not ready." Naomi silenced him with a kiss, more confident than their first. "I'm ready," she whispered against his lips. "I want to be your wife. In every way." He lifted her then, carrying her across the threshold and through to his bedroom, their bedroom now. The room was simple but had been prepared with care, fresh linens on the bed, a vase of wildflowers on the dresser, a candle casting a warm glow. Their coming together was tender, unhurried. Tucker's hands, so capable with horses and cattle, were gentle as they undressed her, his eyes reverent as he beheld her. Naomi, who had once feared this moment, found herself responding with an eagerness that surprised her, her body arching toward his touch, her heart opening to him completely. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms, Naomi felt a contentment she had never known. Here, finally, was home. The seasons turned. Summer faded into a glorious autumn, the aspen trees turning golden on the mountainsides. Winter came early that year, blanketing the ranch in snow, keeping them close to the hearth. They read aloud to each other on long evenings, Tucker's voice bringing to life the adventures in the few books Naomi had brought from Boston. They learned each other's bodies in the darkness, finding joy in their union. In spring, as the land awakened, Naomi discovered she was with child. Tucker's face, when she told him, shone with such happiness that she thought her heart might burst. "A baby," he kept saying, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." The pregnancy wasn't easy. The summer heat taxed Naomi's strength, and there were frightening days of spotting that had Tucker riding furiously for the doctor. But by harvest time, her condition had stabilized, her belly now a proud curve. One crisp October morning, Tucker found Naomi standing on the porch, gazing out at the land, her hands resting on her swollen abdomen. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand behind her, his arms encircling her, his hands covering hers. "How different my life is from what I imagined," she replied. "A year ago, I was in disgrace, being sent away to a man I'd never met, in a place I'd never been." She turned in his arms, looking up at him with eyes full of love. "I thought I was being punished. Instead, I found everything I never knew I wanted." Tucker's hand came up to touch the star pendant that still hung around her neck. "I told you from the start you weren't a punishment. You were my reward, heaven sent. And you," she said softly, "were my salvation." Their daughter was born as the first snow fell, a healthy, strong-lunged girl with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined chin. They named her Hope, for what she represented to them both. 2 years later, a son joined their family, followed by another daughter the year after that. The ranch prospered under their joint care, expanding as Tucker's herd grew and Naomi's vegetable garden became renowned throughout the county. In time, Naomi even reconciled with her family. Her sister came to visit first, marveling at the life Naomi had built. Later, her parents made the journey, her father gruff but impressed with Tucker's success, her mother tearful at the grandchildren she'd nearly missed knowing. "Are you happy here?" her mother asked as they watched the children playing in the yard. "Truly happy." Naomi looked at Tucker, who was showing her father the new barn they'd built, his face animated as he described their plans for the future. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. "What began as banishment became the greatest blessing of my life." And on quiet nights, when the children were asleep and the ranch was still, Naomi and Tucker would sometimes sit on the porch, his arm around her shoulders, her head against his chest, and gaze up at the stars, the same stars that had guided them to each other, that continued to light their way forward together.